we're actually thinking of a sixth, and that would be the Space Force. Does that make sense? The Space Force, General. You probably haven't even heard that. I'm just telling you now. This is perhaps because we're getting very big in space, both militarily and for other reasons, and we are seriously thinking of the Space Force.
UFOs have captivated the public interest for decades, but they've always been dismissed, including by me, as the province of wackos. But that is changing thanks to some remarkable videotape and first-hand accounts from very sober people who are trained to identify aircraft. And that would include this video. It shows two Navy pilots encountering something bizarre off the east coast of the United States. Watch this.
Echo 6-1 Tango, Roger. Roger. There's troubleshooting.
Did you box moving target?
No, I took an auto track.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Wow.
Okay, these are guys who fly for a living, who know what other airplanes look like, including those maintained by foreign governments, and they're totally shocked by this. This is one among many incidents like it, including many that have happened in the middle of the day to sober people, lots of independent witnesses at the same event, commercial pilots, military pilots, O'Hare Airport in the afternoon. None of them have obvious explanations. These are aircraft, apparently, that are moving in ways that appear to violate physics, that are flying very differently from any aircraft ever observed, and way faster than any plane that we know any foreign country has. What is this? Well, we don't know, because for some reason the Defense Department is not interested in finding out. UFOs have been the stuff of conspiracy theorists for decades, often mocked for talking about it, but maybe they shouldn't be mocked. Commander David Fravor spent 18 years as a naval aviator, a pilot. In 2004, he had an unforgettable encounter with an aircraft he said was defying the laws of physics. Former Commander Fravor joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on tonight. Tell us what you saw.
Well, we had launched on a routine training mission. When we joined up, we were told that the event was going to be canceled and that we have real-world tasking, and we were sent out to the west. Now, take in mind that this has taken place about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, between San Diego and Ensenada, Mexico,
yep.
On a clear, perfect day, blue waters. We get out to the spot where they tell us it's at. We start looking around, and both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white, 40-foot long, tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. So as we drive around in a clockwise flow, we get to about the 9 o'clock position, and I said, well, I'm going to go down and check it out, and the other jet is going to stay high. So as we go down, when we get to the 12 o'clock position, it starts to mirror us. So it's in a clockwise flow, and it's on the opposite side of the circle from us. And we continue this. It's in a climb, we're in a descent, we're getting a great look at it. This whole thing takes about probably up to 5 minutes from the time we show up. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm going to go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me. And I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today. Not at all.
Even now, even 13 years later, is there anything that you know of capable of this kind of behavior?
No, there's nothing I know of. I mean, when we saw the video with the IR, it has no exhaust, no discernible things of anything form of propulsion. And this thing came from a dead hover over the water, just kind of moving around, to a climb up to about 12,000 feet to rapidly accelerating away in a climb, and in less than 2 seconds it was gone. And you figure you're talking 50 miles of visibility, and you can easily see an object that size easily out to 10 miles, and it just disappeared in seconds.
What would be the effects on a human pilot of the G-forces involved in that altitude change?
Well, the altitude wouldn't be bad. It would be the acceleration of the object.
That's right.
Honestly, I wanted to fly it.
Yeah,
but,
I bet.
Talking to some physicists, They don't think the human body could handle that kind of force with that acceleration.
It doesn't sound like the human body could. So bottom line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight, that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
When presumably you expressed that belief to your superiors, what did they say?
Actually, we caught a lot of grief getting back to the boat, and it got passed off as an event that no one could explain. Now, keep in mind, they had been tracking these for 2 weeks prior to us seeing it, and this was the first time that manned airplanes had been airborne when the objects appeared.
Shaitan sets his throne on water.
Iblis' throne. So people have been talking about Iblis. Where is he? His throne. The Prophet ﷺ has reported, in a very sound hadith, which is in Muslim, reported by Jabir, that Arsh al-Shaytan, Arsh Iblis ala al-ma'. Arsh Iblis ala al-ma'. The throne of Iblis, the throne of Shaitan, this is the master Shaitan. The master Shaitan, his throne is on water. Where? What water? What ocean? Allahu Ta'ala a'lam. But there are certain indications that could maybe tell us where his throne could be. There's another hadith where it says, "Innahu," this is also in Muslim, "Innahu 'inda barzakh al-ma'." 'Inda barzakh al-ma'. What's a barzakh? A barzakh, it's like a partition, when you have the sweet water and the salty water, بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان, whereby the sweet water does not merge with the salty water. That's a barzakh. That's a partition. In this hadith, he says he is on this barzakh. His throne is on this barzakh. His throne is on this barzakh, which is, again, somewhere.
There is one hadith that is very fascinating, and it is an authentic hadith. Our Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Jinnu thalatha. Jinns are of 3 types.
One type, لهم أجنحة يطيرون في الهواء. One type, they have wings and they fly and they roam around in the air.
They are flying around in the skies. They're living their lives and they're going by.
The other type, they are hayat.
There's a category of jinn that typically appears in the form of animals. And 2 animals in particular the jinns love to appear in. But sometimes there are other animals. And the 2 main animals that the jinns love to appear in are snakes and dogs.
Are said to be races of intelligent creatures which come from extraterrestrial worlds or parallel dimensions. They live primarily underground or in caves and tunnels, that sort of thing. A common appearance described in the encounter literature is of a being 6 to 7 feet tall that walks upright like a human being, but probably has a reptilian head, reptilian eyes, and scaly skin, like a lizard skin.
The reptilian is not one of the alien types that's thought to be warm and cuddly, but is more sinister, more beastly, if you will.
UFOs have captivated the public interest for decades, but they've always been dismissed, including by me, as the province of wackos. But that is changing.
But this does not mean that they never appear in another form. They could have other forms as well. The 3rd type of jinn is they come and they go. This is the one that seems to want to irritate us, want to frighten us, want to come into our lives. This 3rd category.
They seem to have great shape-shifting abilities, and we can speculate that they could take on any form through various means in order to disguise themselves.
Reptilians have nothing on their minds so much as a worldwide conspiracy to take over the planet.
Reptilians could have the same abilities as natural reptiles.
Reptiles have specialized adaptations for living underground. They have sensory cells in their eyes that allow them to see very well at night.
Again, there is a lot of discussion about this hadith. And there are some things that we can say very definitively. First of all, the question comes, are these 3 types the only 3 types of jinn? Some of the scholars say that the Quran and the Sunnah mention more than these. So these are an example of 3 types of jinn. But what I want you to take from this hadith, notice how there are 3 different types that the Prophet ﷺ talks about. And notice how the 3 have different characteristics and different abilities. So notice one flies through the air. The implication is that one flies through the air and the other one doesn't fly through the air.
Some of them are good and some of them are bad. The good jinns are called jinns and the bad jinns are called shayateen.
The jinn are all different. They have different abilities, different characteristics, they do different things, they like different things, they dislike different things.
And there are different categories of shayateen. There's a shaitan, al-marid, and there's the afrit. As there's criminals, let us say, some of them are oppressors, some of them are transgressors, some of them are disbelievers. Also the shayateen, there are ranks, depending on their disbelief, depending on their power. And every type of them have different ability and different strength. Just like you, my dear brothers and sisters. Some of you can lift 20 kilos and some of you can lift 200 kilos. Some of you are intelligent and some of you are not as intelligent.
Carry on.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the jinn say, وَمِنَّا الصَّالِحُونَ وَمِنَّا دُونَ ذَلِكَ. Some of us are righteous and some of us are not. وَكُنَّا طَرَائِقَ قِدَدًا. And many of us have different ways and different ideologies and different thinking. Some of them, the jinns, are Muslims. Some of them are disbelievers. Some of them are Jews, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, monks, everything. The same as human beings.
In the beginning, 3 were created. Man, made of clay, angels, made of light, and a third, made of fire, called the Jinn. Created with free will, this third race ruled the world for thousands of years.
Out front now, the former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November, Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think it's probably been a little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological.
Creation of God. Iblis is a creation of God. Iblis is a jinn. Iblis is, he's made of fire, which the Quran talks again in several places that he's made of fire. But where did Iblis come from? And were there the likes of Iblis before? So the Mufassirun have commented. Again, this is based on those narrations that I talked about earlier. And what Allah Azza wa Jal did is that He created a whole creation of jinns that were on the earth. And this is, you will find in many of the early Mufassirun have commented on this. He created them on the earth.
And the jinn race we had created before Adam.
And they lived on earth for 2,000 years. The jinn in these 2,000 years, the jinn are not the smartest. Allah gave the jinn a lot of strength, and Allah gave them a lot of powers, and they could do many things. And the jinn were living on this earth before Adam alayhi salam. And there were nations, and there were tribes, and they were living, and they were getting married, and there was descendants and so forth.
Because jinns could fly, see, and jinns could go through many of the heavens. They could go up and down. They didn't have to stay on the earth. They didn't have to stay on the earth. They could travel up. It was only when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came that they were trapped within this first universe. This is clear from the Quran. This in Surah Safat you will find this. In Surah Jinn you will find this. That Allah did not allow them to go beyond the first heaven, or the first heaven meaning the end of this universe. They can't go past that after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became a prophet. But before that they could go above that. So what happened is that on these travels, Iblis proved himself that he was so close to God. And Allah Azza wa Jal then allowed him to get closer and closer to higher and higher basically. And they say in some of these narrations that there was no space in the heavens was left, like no large space was left in the heaven, but Iblis had gone there and he had worshipped God. So he was a very, very, very close, you could say jinn, a servant jinn, however you want to put it, to God.
And the jinn race we had created before Adam.
And they lived on earth for 2,000 years. The jinn in these 2,000 years, the jinn are not the smartest. Allah gave the jinn a lot of strength, and Allah gave them a lot of powers, and they could do many things. And the jinn were living on this earth before Adam alayhi salam. And there were nations, and there were tribes, and they were living, and they were getting married, and there was descendants and so forth. But they were so corrupt on earth. They caused so much corruption. They killed each other, deceived each other, cheated on each other, took the rights from each other. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent an army of the angels to fight them. And this army of the angels fought them and pushed them out of the land and made them live on the islands of the sea.
And we're actually thinking of a sixth, and that would be the Space Force. Does that make sense? The Space Force, General. You probably haven't even heard that. I'm just telling you now. This is perhaps because we're getting very big in space, both militarily and for other reasons, and we are seriously thinking of the Space Force.
UFOs have captivated the public interest for decades, but they've always been dismissed, including by me, as the province of wackos. But that is changing thanks to some remarkable videotape and first-hand accounts from very sober people who are trained to identify aircraft.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
But they have attributed to Allah partners, the jinn, while He has created them, and have fabricated for Him sons and daughters. Exalted is He and high above what they describe. And mention, O Muhammad, the day when He will gather them together and say, O company of jinn, you have misled many of mankind. And their allies among mankind will say, Our Lord, some of us made use of others, and we have now reached our term which you appointed for us.
There is a chapter in the Quran where the jinns are explaining themselves. Here, the jinns are saying how they can travel to the edge of the universe and spy on the divine decrees.
And we have sought to reach the heaven, but found it filled with powerful guards and burning flames. And we used to sit therein in positions for hearing, but whoever listens now will find a burning flame lying in wait for him. And we do not know, therefore, whether evil is intended for those on earth, or whether their Lord intends for them a right course. And among us are the righteous, and among us are others not so. We were of divided ways. And we have become certain that we will never cause failure to Allah upon earth, nor can we escape Him by flight. And when we heard the guidance, we believed in it, and whoever believes in his Lord will not fear deprivation or burden. And among us are Muslims in submission to Allah, and among us are the unjust. And whoever has become Muslim, those have sought out the right course. But as for the unjust, they will be for hell firewood. From among the jinn, and mankind. O Muhammad, when we directed to you a few of the jinn listening to the Quran, and when they attended it, they said, "Listen quietly," and when it was concluded, they went back to their people as warners. And I did.
So, we really don't know if these jinns are the aliens. However, we do know that there is something out there that we don't understand, we cannot see, that is lurking and watching us. Whether aliens exist or not, they are part of this universe. They live within the universe. So, they are bound by the same physical laws that dictates the universe. Quran states, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, meaning, praise to God, Lord of the worlds. Here, the worlds is plural. So, be certain that aliens, if they do exist, is not outside the realm of the creation of the higher power. The higher power, whom we may call Mother Nature or God.
وهو الذي خلق الليل والنهار والشمس والقمر كل في فلك يسبحون.
And it is He who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon. All heavenly bodies in an orbit are swimming.
وما جعل